Say you are a man, you are in your early 20s, you masturbate once a day, or even every few days, no big deal, right? No. This is false. In fact, the West seems to support the opposite idea, that masturbation and ejaculation, even if done multiple times a day, is good, even healthy, and has no negative consequences. To the scientific mind, semen has no intrinsic value except for the fertilization of an egg in the womb. But this, it seems to me, is another instance in which our scientists brand everything beyond the scope of their limited methodology as unreal and even impossible. As the Taoist master Mantak Chia notes, some Western scientists may scoff at the idea that semen is an immensely powerful substance. Yet no one can deny the prodigious life potential in the seed of a single man. By gathering this life-generating force within oneself, one collects tremendous energy. The sad fact is that science is still largely ignorant about the dynamics of sexuality. By contrast, the Taoist tradition, the core of Chinese culture, is 8,000 years old and so has more interesting things to say on the matter. The first principle of the Taoist sexual practice is the conservation of the sexual energy. Excessive ejaculation is believed to weaken the nervous system and lead to illness of the body. The sages, Mantak writes, considered 1 drop of semen equal in vital power to 100 drops of blood. Therefore, from the Taoist perspective, semen is considered precious and not something which should be wasted without good reason. Ideally, one should only ejaculate for the purpose of procreation. Instead of being continually released out of the body, the Taoists practice channeling the excess vitality upwards, whereupon it heals and strengthens the organs and the mind and elevates creative and cognitive abilities and provides a vast source of vitality. Sexual energy is regarded by the Taoists as having far more potential for nourishment than even food, and so the practice of cultivation is thought to be vital for the fulfillment of one's potential. In Hinduism, there is a similar tradition called brahmacharya, which translates as behavior which leads to Brahman, and this in particular includes abstinence from lust and sex. Perhaps the most famous advocate of brahmacharya was Swami Vivekananda, a Hindu monk who was a major force in the revival of Hinduism in India during the late 19th century. In his book Practice of Brahmacharya, he described semen as the prana of pranas, it is the hidden treasure in man. It imparts Brahma Tehas, the glory, or the rays, of Brahman, to the face and strength to the intellect. Then in Raja Yoga he describes how, when the sexual energy is controlled, it is converted through a natural process into Ohas Sakti, meaning spiritual power. The yogis say that part of the human energy which is expressed as sex energy, in sexual functions, sexual thought, and so on, when checked and controlled, easily becomes changed into Ohas, and as this lowest center is the one which guides all these functions, therefore the yogi pays particular attention to that center. He tries to take up all this sexual energy and convert it into Ohas. Ohas expresses itself in individuals as magnetism, charisma, and strength, and so everyone and everything will feel a peculiar attraction to those who harness this energy. He writes thus, "One man may speak beautiful language and beautiful thoughts, but they do not impress people. Another man speaks neither beautiful language nor beautiful thoughts, yet his words charm. That is the power of Ohas coming out." This would explain why people who begin the practice report that they feel greater attraction from the world, that the world seems respect their presence more than before, and that they are becoming more and more sociable and outgoing, whereas before they were introverted and easily exhausted by social interaction. These ideas may seem foreign and too religious for a modern audience. However, there is also significant support for the practice of retention from various secular works. Perhaps the most famous example is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, in which he addresses the mystery of sex transmutation. In this chapter, Hill asserts that men can harness their sexual energy, the most powerful of energies, and redirect it for material success and creative genius. He goes on to list a number of men who reportedly practiced sexual transmutation: George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, William Shakespeare, Abraham Lincoln. These men, he asserts, were made geniuses because of their discipline in this practice. He writes, "The desire for sexual expression is by far the strongest and most impelling of all the human emotions. For this very reason, this desire, when harnessed and transmuted into action other than that of physical expression, may raise one to the status of a genius." Friedrich Nietzsche also recognized the potential of sexual vitality and wrote that when contained and transmuted, this energy is the strongest nourishment and, perhaps more than any other factor, it prompts the stimulus of power, the unrest of all forces toward the overcoming of resistances, the thirst for contradiction and resistance. As I have demonstrated, this information is not the reserve of one specific culture or religion or part of the world. Rather, it is found everywhere and throughout history. And yet somehow our society has forgotten. So in their ignorance, men today are damaging themselves by indulgence. I can't see how this will change anytime soon. But the truth remains that semen is the source of a man's strength and creativity, and when he wastes it on frivolous activity, he wastes away his potential, his manhood, and gradually reclines into a passive and mediocre state. Understand this: when you ejaculate, your brain does not know the difference between that and you actually having sex. Your mind thinks if you're ejaculating, you're doing what your sole purpose of life really is, to procreate. Yes, every time you do this, your mind thinks you're creating life. Stop and take a step back and think, what would happen if you cease to do this? Guess what? Your mind panics. Why? Because you are not fulfilling your highest objective of being a human being, so funnily enough, things start to change in your favor. In order for you to procreate, you instantly become more attractive. Don't believe me? Try it. It does actually work. Your voice will become deeper, you become less emotional and more relaxed, you will be able to hold very strong eye contact, issues that would have stressed you out before cease to even slightly bother you. You become more manly, you become more alpha. Just from refraining from playing with yourself, and the longer you can refrain from it, the stronger your power becomes. After 2 weeks you will notice massive changes, after 1-2 months, miracles will occur. All your body fluids will get an upgrade due to the fact your system is under much less stress. Yes, remember, it takes 50 drops of blood to make 2 drops of semen. Every single action your body undertakes is to prioritize semen production. It's a biological fact. If you can resist the very strong urge to ejaculate, whether it's via having sex or playing with yourself, you will gradually build up to dragon-level energy. You may have heard certain celebs using this term. This is what they mean when they say this. It's an amazing force. For example, Nikola Tesla, a famous genius inventor who was light years ahead of anybody in his field. He figured out how to extract free energy from the atmosphere and wanted to make it public before J.P. Morgan had his lab burned to the ground. Guess what? He retained all his semen, he died a virgin, he committed to his work so staunchly, and he knew this highly potent sexual energy would give him the edge over all his rivals. He knew the energy could be transferred into his inventions and make them better. Which they were. Another good example is Mike Tyson. Do you remember how vicious Tyson was in his heyday? He was knocking out world champs for fun, and these guys were not little wimps, some of them were 18 stone 6 feet 5 plus, big hard guys. But young Tyson, despite being quite short, was sparking them clean out with a ruthless edge that nobody else had. They all feared Tyson. Did semen retention give him the edge? I bet it helped him a great deal. There is a tangible force behind this stuff and makes sense when you break it down. Think about it this way, we all know now, energy is not created or destroyed, it just transfers from one point to another. If your semen is inserted into a female, it will eventually become a new life. So if you retain this base chemical, where does that energy go? It won't just disappear, it will be transmuted into other areas that you can choose, and you will have the most potent and vibrant energy source driving you forward. The problems with ejaculating too often. Biologically, you're convincing yourself that your reproductive mission is now complete. This means that you're free to kick back, relax, and become a beta male. It's a big problem. If you want to make more money, get more jacked, or have more real-life sex, then you want your motivation for all these things to be sky high, not rock bottom. Ejaculating all the time leads to the latter. 1. It leads to lower testosterone. Wasting your semen will absolutely tank your testosterone over the mid to long term for all the reasons I'm about to list. We're not just talking about the immediate after effect, we're talking about everything else that it leads to over the weeks, months and years. So yes, over time, ejaculating too often will make you less of a man on a very physical level. And in contrast to this, semen retention will indeed boost testosterone. 2. It leads to depression. This is closely linked to the unbelievable dopamine response you get, especially if you watch porn on a regular basis. The more dopamine you blast your brain with, the higher the future threshold becomes in order for you to be happy. Thus, you get addicted to that new dopamine high and exacerbate the vicious cycle. Depression lurks just around the corner. 3. It leads to social anxiety. Social anxiety just means lower social confidence in certain situations. A lot of people say it's not real, but just like depression, there's very real chemical manifestations that are a result of modern-day realities. Ejaculating all the time can lead to feelings of guilt, erectile dysfunction, poorer eye contact and worsened social skills. It's almost like your subconscious knows that you've not really earned all this ejaculation and that it's fake. What persuaded me most to quit masturbation and pornography was the discovery that there is a vast amount of literature across every culture and religion that records the power of the male vital energy, the seminal fluid, and the importance of retention for health and well-being. This idea has been treated again and again throughout history and in all languages, and yet it is not known or spoken of except by a few small circles and creeds in modern Western society. The following video to learn about the benefits of semen retention. Thank you for watching.